The café was alive, yet she felt invisible within it. Morning light filtered through wide glass windows, scattering across polished wooden tables and the tiled floor. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans, warm bread, and something faintly sweet, vanilla, perhaps. Conversations overlapped softly, creating a constant hum. Laughter from a corner table, the scrape of a chair, the hiss of a milk steamer behind the counter. Life was happening everywhere, except inside her. She sat alone by the window, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. The woman staring back looked composed, neatly brushed hair, a tailored coat, lips curved into a polite, almost pleasant line. Anyone passing by would assume she was simply enjoying a quiet moment to herself. No one could see the exhaustion behind her eyes. Her coffee sat untouched, thin steam rising and disappearing into the air like thoughts she no longer bothered to finish. She wrapped her hands around the mug, welcoming its warmth, even though she didn't plan to drink it. It was easier to feel heat through porcelain than to feel anything inside her chest. She had learned how to sit like this, still, graceful, unremarkable. She had learned how not to fall apart. Once, not so long ago, cafes had been places of joy. Places of laughter and shared glances, of conversations that stretched for hours and dreams spoken out loud. Once, she used to come here with someone who knew how she took her coffee and teased her when she stirred it too much. That version of her felt like a stranger now. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 10 minutes had passed. Or maybe 20. Time no longer behaved properly around her. It slipped, stretched, disappeared without warning. Days blurred together into something shapeless and heavy. Strong, independent, unbreakable. These were the words people used when they spoke about her. She hated them. Strength had become a costume she wore every morning. Independence, an excuse others used to stop checking in. Unbreakable, an assumption that allowed the world to lean on her without ever asking how much weight she could still carry. She exhaled slowly, staring out the window. Outside, a mother held her child's hand while crossing the street. A man laughed into his phone. A cyclist sped past, carefree. Everyone seemed to know where they were going. She did not. Her thoughts drifted, as they often did, to all the things she hadn't said. All the moments she had swallowed her pain to keep the peace. All the nights she had stared at the ceiling, convincing herself that tomorrow would feel lighter. Tomorrow had lied. A familiar tightness formed in her chest, subtle but persistent. She pressed her lips together, straightened her posture, and lifted her chin slightly, an unconscious reflex. She refused to cry here. Not in public. Not where strangers could see the cracks. She was not someone who fell apart in cafes. Or so she believed. A movement near her table caught her attention. At first, she ignored it, assuming it was just another customer passing by or a server navigating between chairs. But the presence lingered, small, still. She looked up. A little girl stood beside her table. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her dark hair was tied into uneven pigtails, one ribbon slightly looser than the other. She clutched a stuffed bunny close to her chest, old, worn, and clearly loved. One of its ears drooped sadly, as if it, too, had lived through too much. The girl's shoes were scuffed. Her jacket was a size too big. But her eyes were clear. They weren't filled with the careless curiosity of most children, nor the restless impatience of those dragged into adult spaces. They held something rarer, something unsettling, understanding. The woman blinked, surprised. "Hello," she said softly, forcing warmth into her voice. The girl didn't smile. She tilted her head slightly, studying the woman's face as if it were a puzzle she was determined to solve. Then, in a voice gentle yet unwavering, she asked, "You look sad, princess, are you?" The word princess landed unexpectedly. It wasn't mocking. It wasn't playful. It wasn't sarcastic. It was sincere. Something in her chest cracked. No one had called her that in years. Once, long ago, it had been said lovingly, by someone who believed she was capable of magic, that she deserved softness. Over time, the word had faded, replaced by titles heavier and colder. Responsible, reliable, the one who can handle it. Princesses, she had learned, were a luxury. She swallowed hard and smiled, the smile she had perfected over a lifetime. The polite one. The reassuring one. The one that told the world don't worry about me. I'm fine, she replied. Thank you. The girl frowned. It wasn't dramatic or exaggerated. Just a small crease between her eyebrows, like she didn't quite believe what she'd been told. That's not a real smile, the girl said simply. The woman's breath caught. Excuses rushed to her mind. Something witty, something light, but none of them came out. Instead, she felt exposed, as if the child had peeled away layers she'd spent years building. Before she could respond, the girl climbed onto the empty chair across from her, her feet dangling above the floor. She placed the bunny on the table between them, carefully, ceremoniously, like an offering. My mommy says, the girl began, lowering her voice as though sharing a secret, that when people are sad, they don't need fixing. The woman listened, frozen. They don't need advice, the girl continued. They just need someone to sit with them. Silence settled between them, not awkward, not tense. Gentle. The cafe noise faded into the background. The woman became acutely aware of her own breathing, the warmth of the mug beneath her hands, the weight of something unspoken pressing against her ribs. She hadn't realized how lonely she was. Not the dramatic kind of loneliness that screamed. The quiet kind. The kind that sat beside you every day, unnoticed, until a child named it out loud. She looked at the little girl, really looked at her. Why did you come talk to me? She asked quietly. The girl shrugged. You looked like my mommy did when she thought no one was watching. The words hit harder than any confession. The woman felt her eyes sting. She turned her face slightly toward the window, blinking rapidly, willing the tears away. She had survived worse than this, she told herself. She had endured heartbreak, disappointment, loss. Why was this so difficult? Because no one had asked before. Not like this. Not without expectations. She took a slow breath. Sometimes, she said carefully, grown-ups forget how to talk about being sad. The girl nodded seriously. That's because they think being sad is bad. The woman laughed softly, an unexpected sound, fragile but real. Yes, she agreed. They do. The girl reached out and gently touched the woman's hand, her fingers small and warm. The contact sent a quiet shock through her body. You don't have to answer, the girl said. I just wanted you to know, it's okay. Something inside the woman finally gave way. She didn't cry. Not yet. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel. And in that small cafe, across from a child with a broken-eared bunny, the silence she had carried for so long finally began to break. Chapter 2. The woman didn't realize she was trembling until the little girl squeezed her hand. It wasn't fear that caused it, nor cold. It was the unfamiliar sensation of being seen without armor. She gently loosened her fingers. From around the mug, afraid that if she held on too tightly, to the cup, to herself, something inside her might finally spill over. The girl watched her closely, as if she sensed the delicate balance forming between holding together and falling apart. You don't have to talk, the girl said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Talking makes people tired. The woman nodded, grateful beyond words. She tried to speak anyway. You're very wise, she managed, her voice uneven. The girl smiled, proud but not boastful. My mommy says wisdom comes from hurting and still being kind. The words echoed, hurting and still being kind. How long had it been since she had allowed herself that kindness? She glanced around the cafe. No one seemed to be paying attention. The world hadn't stopped. Orders were still being called out. Someone laughed near the counter. Life continued, indifferent and relentless. And yet, something sacred was unfolding at their small table. The woman cleared her throat. Does your mommy know you're here? She asked gently. The girl pointed toward a table near the wall. A woman sat there, watching them, not intruding, not interrupting. Their eyes met briefly, and the girl's mother offered a small, reassuring nod. Not permission, exactly. Trust. The woman's chest tightened again. Trust had once come easily to her. Now, it felt like a language she barely remembered. She turned back to the girl. Thank you, she said quietly. For sitting with me. The girl shrugged again, swinging her legs. Everyone needs someone sometimes. The simplicity of the statement made her throat ache. The woman looked down at the bunny lying between them. Its fur was thin in places, one eye slightly loose. It had been repaired more than once, carefully stitched, lovingly kept. "Does it have a name?" she asked. "Mr. Whiskers," the girl replied immediately. "He's very brave." The woman smiled. "He looks like he's been through a lot." "So have you," the girl said matter-of-factly. That was it. The tears came. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. They slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. She turned away instinctively, mortified, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." The girl stood up. Without hesitation, without asking. She stepped closer and wrapped her small arms around the woman's waist. It wasn't a perfect hug. The girl was too short. Her arms didn't fully reach. One side pressed more firmly than the other. The hug was uneven, innocent, untrained. But it was warm. And it was real. The woman froze. Her body didn't know what to do with such uncomplicated affection. Every instinct told her to pull away, to protect herself, to apologize for taking up space with her emotions. Instead, she sank down slightly and hugged back. The moment her arms closed around that small frame, something inside her shattered. She inhaled sharply, her face pressed against the girl's shoulder. Years of swallowed pain surged forward, losses unnamed, expectations unmet, nights spent convincing herself she didn't need anyone. Her shoulders shook. The girl held on tighter. "It's okay," the girl murmured, patting her back the way she'd seen adults do. "I've got you." No one had said that to her in a long time. The cafe noise blurred. The woman cried, not for what she had lost, but for how long she had carried it alone. Each tear felt like something loosening, like a knot slowly untangling. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red, her breath uneven. The girl looked up at her, smiling softly. "See," she said, "hugs help." The woman laughed through her tears. A real laugh. Broken, but genuine. "Yes," she agreed. "They really do." She wiped her face, embarrassed but lighter. "You know," she said, "I forgot how to ask for help." The girl tilted her head. "You don't always have to ask. Sometimes people can just give." The woman nodded slowly. From across the cafe, the girl's mother wiped her own eyes. She didn't intervene. She understood. Some moments didn't belong to adults. The woman glanced at the bunny again. "Can I ask you something?" The girl nodded eagerly. "Why did you call me, princess?" The girl thought for a moment. "Because you look like someone who's supposed to be protected." The answer stole her breath. She had spent her entire life protecting others. Being the strong one, the dependable one. No one had ever suggested she deserved protection too. The girl climbed back onto her chair and picked up Mr. Whiskers. "Princesses are allowed to be sad," she said firmly. "They don't have to smile all the time." The woman reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from the girl's face. "You're right." A pause settled between them, comfortable now. "What happens," the woman asked softly, "if I forget this feeling again?" The girl considered this seriously. Then she placed Mr. Whiskers into the woman's hands. "So you remember," she said. "He reminds me when I'm scared." The woman's eyes widened. "I can't take him." "You can borrow him," the girl corrected. "Until you don't feel sad anymore." The weight of the toy in her hands felt heavier than it should have, heavy with meaning. "Thank you," the woman whispered. The girl slid off the chair. "I have to go now." She hesitated, then leaned in and gave the woman one last hug, quick but deliberate. As she walked back to her mother, the woman watched her go, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. She stayed seated for a while after they left. The cafe felt different now. Brighter, warmer, the air easier to breathe. She lifted her coffee and took a sip. It was still warm. Outside, the city continued its rush. People hurried past, unaware that something extraordinary had just happened inside a quiet cafe. The woman stood, slipped the bunny carefully into her bag, and took one last look around. She didn't feel fixed, but she felt less alone. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt like enough.